Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me once again. You are always most welcome. Well, my first kit review for the year, in fact. So here we go, first kit review of the year. Can't believe it actually. So I had 3 weeks off YouTube. Well deserved break, I think. Although it went very fast. It doesn't feel like 3 weeks, it feels like more like about 7-10 days, to be honest. Anyway, here we are, back to the filming, and today we have something particularly interesting. Now, story behind this one. So this is the Yuma Harrier 2 plus the AV8B. Now, this kit was recommended to me by 2 or 3 of you, and one of you, Aubrey St. John, down in Australia, or is that up in Australia? Depends whether you're there or not. Down under, no, I'm down under. He very kindly sent this as a gift, saying he was really appreciated and enjoyed all the shows last year, and he really thinks that I should have included this in my kits of the year. And another gentleman said the same thing very strongly. Unfortunately, you know, as I've said, you can't review every single kit, you know, in a given time frame. But he and this other chap are very convinced that this would have scored in my top 10. So let's see if he's right about that. Let's see if he's right. If it is that good, I'll tell you at the end. I'll try and figure out where it may have come had it been there. But it just shows, like I said, in kits of the year, unless you open absolutely every single kit, it was literally my kits of the year based on what I saw last year. So I didn't see this one, unfortunately. It can't go in kits of the year this year because it wasn't made this year. So it didn't get excluded for any reason. It was just unfortunate bad luck, really. Anyway, let's have a look at it. So this is Yuma. Now, Yuma are a Chinese company. I think they're based in Hong Kong, are they? Or am I wrong? No, I'm wrong. It says Zhangjia Community, Shenzhen, so it's not Hong Kong, beg pardon. Yuma Model Company. Now, I've got no knowledge of this company. I've never seen one of their products before. I know that I'm not first, obviously not, as I've said, I'm not first to the punch with this. Lots of people have been in before me. But we're not going to... I haven't seen any of the reviews of it. I think Phil Flory did one because it came up in his feed, I think, but I never watched it. So I've got no idea what it's like, really. Let's have a look at what we've got on the side. So it's kit number, their kit number. Do they give it a number? Yes, 48 scale. And it's D1001, 1001. And it's in quite a nice, sturdy little box. Let's have a look on the side. So we've got three options schemes, it looks like. And they are, it's printed very small, you're probably going to see this better than I am. The USS Bonham Richard, February 2016. So obviously it's the US Marine Corps, yeah. And the Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003 at the Ahmed Al Jalba Air Base. And that's the middle one. And then the last one is Operation Intense Inherent Resolve at the Bahrain Air Base in March to October 2019, and I'm trying to remember what Inherent Resolve was. Was that the action against... I think this was to do with the illegal activities from Iran, I think, in the Persian Gulf, if I'm not mistaken. It says Bahrain, so that's a bit of a hint, isn't it? So that's the Persian Gulf, isn't it? On the other side, we've got a bit of a dodgy 3D rendering of what the kit will look like, and shows that we've got masks, we've got etch, photo etch, we've got a Lambo cockpit. It sounds like it might be a 3D printed cockpit. That sounds good. Some film, metal parts, screws, I think. Decals. Alright, let's have a look at this then. Something new for me. Completely out of the blue. So there's a lot riding on this. Aubrey's probably... I must apologise actually because he just arrived as I was taking my break, unfortunately. And I've been talking about having this break from YouTube for a year, 18 months, and never got around to it. Just wanted to recharge my batteries a bit. So it's unfortunate. He probably thought, oh, he doesn't like it, he's not going to film it. No, that was never the case. It's just waiting for the end of the sort of little sabbatical that I took. Right, so now then. Oh, nicely packed bags. I'm going to have to use the old knife on this. Where's my knife gone? I think we might have a crisis. Crisis, Baldric, crisis. My craft knife has done a runner. I may have to use scissors. I may have to leave you in the lurch here because I need my knife, and I think I've left it in the other room. Can you bear with me just a few seconds? Just talk amongst yourselves because we need that knife urgently. Won't be 2 secs, it's not far away. There it is. Right. All is not lost. I have a new blade as well, so cutting these bags should be a doddle, I hope. Should be. Now then. Okay. Ta-da! Sorry about that. Wasn't quite prepared, was I? See, I'm out of practice. You can tell I've not been doing any reviews lately because everything's moved. Because I've been working on the mosquito stuff. Anyway, so lots and lots of plastic. Ooh, it looks very cool. Ooh, it does look very good. Now remember, I'm probably a good person to review this, given that I built the Kinetic C Harrier in 48 scale. Oh, the less said about that, the better, really. It ended up as a beautiful model. Thanks to me mainly, and Phil Flory's washers and all that stuff, but it wasn't thanks to Kinetic, because certainly not down to the instruction. The kit wasn't that bad in terms of its, the plastic quality was all very good and all that, but it was just so ill-conceived, that kit, with its instructions and so much flawed information, incompetent instructions, etc, etc. Anyway, let's hope we have none of that here, so I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll pop that over there and we'll move these. Perhaps I've been a bit precipitous, I need to get rid of them, don't I? They're going to be in the way. Let's just wait till we've got space for it. Let's see what we got then. See, I'm a bit rusty, getting back into it. Let's see then, so we've got, oh, it's really quite a thick book. It's not in the bag then, it doesn't come in a bag. Okay. There's like a leaflet here for aircraft cockpit sticker series. So this is cockpit instrument sets, 3D instrument sets, which I presume are these sort of 3D printed decals, if you will, for the instruments. What have they got? Tomcat F-14 for Great Wall Hobby. Oh, okay. Fighting Falcon for 72nd scale for the Tamiya Trumpeter Strike Eagle for Great Wall Hobby. Ooh, okay, yeah, that's quite good. Those look quite good actually. Let me zoom in. Have a quick look at these. I'll try and just hold this and let it linger for a moment or two so you get a chance to have a proper look at these. I'm trying to keep it still. So this is your option. So you've got 32nd scale range, F16 for the Tamiya kit, longbow Apache for the main kit, or the TACOM indeed, Mirage 2000C I think that is, and then the Phantom, Meng's Phantom, or the Tomcat, F14A Tomcat. It's very tempting, isn't it? We'll see what they're like for quality. Never know, I might get myself some of these. Just try it out. I'm not a big fan of this. I've talked about this at length. I do find that by the time you've modified your kit to get this stuff into it, you might as well just detailed up the original kit. And sometimes, especially with things like Tamiya and Great Wall Hobby, I think you've probably got enough detail that you can quite happily manage with them, you know. But there's a good range, isn't there? There's quite a lot of stuff there, different scales. Doesn't mention the Sea Harrier, unfortunately, because that was Magic Factory Corsair. We've even got one for the Magic Factory Corsair there, look, yeah. Interesting. Yes, very good. Quite like that. I'd like to see more. We'll get more of an idea on that when we see the one that's included in the kit. It'll give us a bit of an idea, won't it? So I'll pop that back in the box. And let's have a quick look at our instructions. Let's see if it's got to be better than Kinetic's, hasn't it? Surely. The trouble is the Kinetic instructions didn't look terrible until you started actually constructing the kit, and then you realised just how flawed they really were. So somebody popped up and was a bit critical of one of my reviews recently and said, why don't you just call it an initial review because it means nothing? Well, I've said this over and over and over. It's quite obvious, it doesn't matter who's doing the review. Yeah, it could be Jesus Christ doing it, frankly. And no matter how good you are, it's just an inbox review, and until you get the glue out and start cutting the parts off the sprue, trying to make them fit together, that's when we really find out what they're like. Which is why I always do, literally always do, a after build review. The trouble is I don't build very much, so they're very few and far between. But I will be doing that with the Mosquito, but I can tell you now that that's going pretty well, to be honest. So let's have a look. Zoom you in and we'll flash through this as quick as possible. So as I say, I know nothing about this company. I've never seen them before. All new to me. We start off with our building up our ejector seat. And it looks like we've got some... Yeah, you've got a good colour guide. So it's already doing better than border model because it's got colour guides for the parts. So that's something, isn't it? So it has the part number, which I think is... Yeah, part number is in the big bold. And then the smaller number in the grey, that's the actual colour call out itself. So you're building up your cockpit and you've got your back ejector rail there for the launch of the ejector seat. Having built your seat already. Then you've got some... basically the corner consoles that come in here, and there's an option there to choose different ones. Then you're dropping in the ejector seat itself there into the tub. Then you build up your nose gear bay around underneath the tub, which is fairly normal. The nose wheel well. They're also, yeah, I like this, they're giving you a call out explaining what you're doing. Doesn't look like they tell you an awful lot about the actual details of the parts, but at least we've got a heading so we know what we're assembling. For me, that's not the important bit because that's kind of obvious. It's more the individual components that I want to know more about. But anyway, so it's a bit like, it's kind of a bit like Airfix in that respect. Although in fairness to Airfix, give them credit where it's due, and the 24 scale Messerschmitt, which did have a few quality issues, but they weren't associated with their fantastic instructions, which were very clear about parts, weren't they? Brilliant. Anyway, we'd like to see more of that. So, then we've got our nose. You're going to build your nose up, and you've got a little bit of work again for the instrumentation and some of the radio equipment and things like that. Then you're going to bring in your tub with your ejector seat into the two halves of the nose and cockpit, build it up into one. Then you're going to flip it over, and you've got your... is that the door, is it? The door? Or is it just the back wall? And building up the walls of the wheel well for the actual nose wheel. Then you've got your belly here, and it's got the inorganic gun condition. Inorganic gun condition. What do they mean by that? Some Chinglish here, I think. So, something to do with the cannon underneath, I think, because I think it's got a... I'm not sure what the gun is. Select gun pod, select lantern pod. So, you've got a choice of either the gun or the pod underneath. I think that's what they're trying to say, in their slightly odd way. Then you've got the normal sort of bay for the main gear, because of course you have this strange setup on the Harrier where you have a double main gear in the centre, ventral gear, and then you have the outrigger gear, of course, on the out on the wings, and you got your air brake as well. And then you've got this two sides of the fuselage coming together. You've got the ram jack there for the operation of the air brake, and then you've got what looks like it just says belly again, so it is a bit lacking in detail, I've got to say. But it's basically your flare dispenser packs, countermeasures pack flares that goes in this case, unlike in the Falklands where, I'll just tell you this for those of you that don't know. So in the Falklands they didn't have, it was the early days of having any kind of countermeasures or flare dispensers for anti-heat seeking missiles. And it was especially dangerous for the Harriers in the Falklands campaign. Not so much against the Argentine Air Force. Of course, they had a real threat from them, don't get me wrong. But the bigger danger was when they were at low level, because they were often at low level. And the Argentines were equipped with the blowpipe missile. So, man pads, you know. I think they had Stinger as well. I think they had, well, no, the British had Stinger. Anyway, they had at least two types of man pad. And so they needed this facility. And what they did is they actually packed... I was reading this in a couple of the books, Sharkey Ward's book, and I think it was 809, Harrier 809. They used to pack these flare munitions, sort of very crudely jerry-built sort of system that would ignite them, and then all they did, they would drop them out of the air brake bay. You just pulled the air brake out, they'd just fall out. So if they were really worried and went in low over a site and they could see that there was guys there likely to shoot up at them, they'd drop some of these, but of course they ran out very quickly, so... You can only sort of do it really once, I think. Anyway, here on the AV8B, our American cousins have gone and made it a bit more advanced in the way that they've gone about this, and it's got a proper chaff dispenser, and it shows it empty or full, which is interesting. Empty or full, see that? It's cool, isn't it? And then you've got the same, oh, it actually says this time, chaff pod. Chaff pod on the top. She should have really said on the bottom as well, but anyway. On the top they've got these chaff pods as well. So that's really impressive. So they've got a lot more facility than what the Brits had to make do with, you know. Obviously it's a development from our learnings of our own, probably what we've passed on to them from our own experiences with the aircraft, what it needs. Then you've got your all moving tail, elevator, sort of all moving tailplane elevators, if you will. Horizontal tail, as they call it. Vertical tail, all very straightforward stuff. Plus it's got a rudder. And then we're going to move on to our airframe. We're going to work on the jet nozzles. So, vector thrust and flame baffles. Here we are. This is the real business end of the Harrier, isn't it? Now remember, the front nozzle, not a lot of people know this, as Michael came to say, but the front nozzle is just cold air. Cold air. It's actually just like a bleed jet, which is used for controlling the aircraft. But the actual red hot exhaust is the rear one of the two, which is why it has the flame protector, the flame baffle, only at the rear. Yeah. And then we've got here bits of the sort of the cowling trim there, like what do you call it, an aero cowling, let's call it. Then we've got our main wings here, top and bottom coming together, and you've got a couple of options here. You're installing F1, because I think there's two different versions in terms of aerials and things. And then we've got our lights at the end of the wingtips on the top, and of course it has the vector thrust nozzle as well. The what do they call it? The not the bypass. My mind's gone. Basically the minor attitude control jets. They've got a proper name, but I can't remember what it is. Mind you, it doesn't say there, unfortunately. And then we've got the inlet for your Pegasus engine. It is Pegasus still, isn't it? I think it is. And that looks a better solution than the one that we had on the Kinetic, because you've got two options here. You've got open or closed, two options, which looks pre-molded, I think. I'll see in a minute. And that looks a lot better. And then you've got all the little intakes and vents and things, and aerials, antennas, navigation lights. We've got an extending fuel probe, receiving pipe as they call it. Or the open version there, closed version there. And then we've got the GAU, yeah, so they're not using the Aiden cannon like we have. It's a GAU 12, and it sounds like it's a single one, is it? Is there one or is there two? That will become clear in a second. Is there one or two? No, there are two. Wow. So it's got some firepower then. Yeah, because that's is that the cannon? It's not quite as big as the one that's in the Thunderbolt, is it? But it's still packs quite a punch. And then you've got the belly mounting there. You see there's two of them on the belly mount. And you've got your air brake going in as well. Inorganic gun position. Inorganic gun position. So this basically means if you're not having the guns and you're having the two ventral strakes instead. Those ventral strakes are not for aerodynamics when it's in flight. It's more to do with controlling the flow as it's blasting its jet blast down when it's taking off and landing, vertical takeoff. That's what that really is all about. And then you've got the main airframe and the nose coming together here. Cockpit and radome with your cockpit frame surround for the canopy there. And then you've got your instrumentation, strangely being added later. Okay. Instrumentation coming in there, which is going to go in the front of the main tub. The rear wall and the hatch cover for the cockpit, and the cabin rear view mirrors. I can't remember. I don't think the Sea Harrier had these mirrors, did it? Not like that anyway, because these are big. This is a much bigger canopy, which is probably perhaps what was needed there, really. Anyway, head-up display. There's a head-up display complete assembly here, and you then build it up thus. And then you drop all this assembly in onto the top of the cockpit, and then finally you bring in your actual canopy glass as well. And there's a sensor, I think it's a targeting sensor that's on the nose. It might be infrared sensor for air-to-air action actually, because of course it carries the Sidewinders. Also a belly sensor. And we've got the wheel well and pylons. Now remember, on this one it's quite different from the original Harrier, only in 2 or 3 things that are noticeable. Obviously it's got these, we mentioned the bigger canopy, we mentioned the chaff dispensers, but it's got this bigger wing of course than the original Harriers had. Anyway, it's more like a GR7, GR9, where they extended the wingtips beyond what they'd had on the early Harriers, but they've kept the basic pylons for the wheels. What do they call them? How do they phrase it? Auxiliary landing gear. Okay, so the wing landing gear basically. So that's relatively in the same position as it would be on an early Harrier, like an AV8B. But the wing, of course, has this extension, so it's a longer wingspan, and of course it has these leading edge extensions, which we'll come to in a second. Anyway, you've got your weapons pylons coming on here, getting those all ready and popping those underneath on the wing. Oh sorry, I should have pointed out there's a ventral option as well here. There's a pylon, a ventral, central one underneath. And then you've got the actual weapons pylons, the actual rail, the weapons attached to themselves. Then you've got your flaps. You've got the option of open or closed, down flaps or flaps up or down. And again, there's a lot more, because it's got this much bigger wing, you've got much bigger flaps as well, deeper flaps. And they go into the back of the wing thus. Then you've got your auxiliary landing gear out on the wings. Not sure that they were hugely different within themselves. Perhaps just a little beefier than on the original Harrier. And they have this much bigger fairing as well, because they are sort of in the airflow. They have this longer aerodynamic fairing to clean up the drag. Keeps it minimal. I'm still not sure I quite understand why they didn't fair it in a little bit more, certainly on the top side, but anyway, there we go. It's a design choice that was made by the USA, I think. And then you've got your AIM 9M Sidewinders, so fairly late generation Sidewinder, not the latest, but very adequate, very impressive piece of kit, also known as the Death Ray. And I'm just going to have a talk about this, just going to stop there with the reviewing for one moment for a little bit of history. Some of you will have seen in the last couple of weeks that the Imperial War Museum put out quite a good video about Sharkey Ward and the air war in the Falklands with the Sea Harriers. And I just want to correct a little bit of a myth that is kind of annoying me quite a lot. I have become, I'm not going to say expert because that would be nonsense because I wasn't there, but I've done a lot of reading. I've now read, I think, 7 books. I say it doesn't make you an expert, of course it doesn't, but I've read some really detailed accounts. One of the best, apart from Sharkey Ward's, actually, was Harrier 809, which some of you will have read, by Roland White. Now, he goes into forensic detail in all of his books, which is what I like about them, without it being dull. And he's very good at gathering together all the relevant information, and he gets information about development of the aircraft, development of the missiles, the Argentine Air Force's side of the story in great detail. Really interesting, fascinating stuff. But one of the things that was in this documentary which caused some consternation, there is a myth, and I do use that word advisedly, myth, that the reason that the British Royal Naval Air Service Fleet Air Arm won the Battle of the Falklands with the Sea Harriers, and this myth is particularly believed in Argentina, I have to say. It seems to me, anyway, certainly from the comments. I get a lot of comments about this on my own videos that pertain to the subject. And the myth is that they won because they had the 9L Lima, the L Sidewinder. Now this was an all aspect ratio, big jump in the technology of the Sidewinder, so it was a definite advantage. However, what people don't seem to, and that's it, they just extrapolate that to mean that's why the British won. That's why Argentina didn't shoot down any Sea Harriers. No, that's completely wrong, I'm afraid. The elements of the change in the seeker head on the the 9L, certainly was a big jump. No disputing that. But this became more of a psychological advantage in the event. Now, note that phrase, in the actual events that took place. There are no head-on shots against the Argentine aircraft at all, according to all the accounts that are given by all the pilots. They were trained to get behind, and this technology, this gadget, if you like, this was new. So they weren't specifically given training about, oh, well, we just stand off and, like you would today, fire from a distance and fire head-on and job done. It doesn't work like that. And they weren't trained to do that anyway. That was not the way the doctrine of the Royal Navy Fleet Air Arm pilots based at Yeovilton were. That was not the doctrine. That was risky because you might waste the missile. They would use the Sea Harrier's manoeuvrability to get behind the enemy, which they did in almost every single case. And in some of the cases of the shootdowns during the Falklands War, where the Argentine aircraft were shot down by Sea Harriers, some of those missiles were not the 9 Lima anyway. They were still using the G model of the Sidewinder. So this myth has just been propagated and it's been expanded upon, and there is no doubt that it had the potential to be a war-winning weapon. But even the Imperial War Museum were very misleading in the wording and the ambiguity in what they said. An undoubted advantage over the Argentine. Well, the Sea Harriers were outnumbered, literally, if you do your research, by 10 to 1. The Argentines had approximately just shy of 200 aircraft, and the task force from Britain had just 20 at the beginning. It did swell, they lost a few, and it sort of swelled to about 26, I think, in the end, despite having lost 7, I think. I think they lost 6, was it 6 or 7? Sea Harriers, that was 2, 1, that's the third one. Sorry, I'm just doing a calculation. Accounts for. I think they lost 6 or 7 in total. None of them to air conflict. Most accidents or ground fire. But these shootdowns of the Mirages and the Daggers and the Skyhawks were taken from behind. So the actual advantage, there was an advantage with this missile, no question. I'm not denigrating the product, it was brilliant. But they didn't actually use it, you could say, to its full advantage. Partly because that's just not the way that they engaged, in combat, and the way the Sea Harrier was designed when it was conceived. The 9L wasn't around, so it would have been an advantage, perhaps over if there'd been more time. There'd have probably been more shootdowns and more successful kill rates against Argentine aircraft. But the actual reality is, if you read all the accounts, that there wasn't a single example of them taking a shot from a very peculiar angle or head-on. They were all still pretty much within the envelope of the 9G, and some of those shootdowns were with the 9G. So I just want to have a little rant here, because I've had some abuse in the last couple of weeks about this. People saying it's undoubtedly an advantage. We know that, but if you read the accounts, that's not how the weapon was actually used. It is not the reason the Sea Harriers won the air battle. Yeah, they won the air battle for a couple of reasons. One, they stayed within their flight supremacy, and not air supremacy because that means you control the skies, but within the supremacy of their aircraft within its flight envelope. In other words, medium to low level. Where the Argentines' aircraft Mirages were more of a high-level interceptor. So they kind of avoided each other's strengths, which was very wise. But occasionally, of course, the Argentines couldn't avoid it because they had to come down on these bombing runs on the British fleet at San Carlos in the Sound there. And that brought them right into the fly into the spider's web of the Sea Harriers that were waiting, and all the missiles, of course, on the ground as well, like Rapier and the Seawolf on the ships. So the real reason the Argentines didn't get into dogfights where they would have had the upper hand was that the Royal Navy were aware of what the capabilities of that aircraft were. And if you do this research and read the books I mentioned, you'll see that there was a lot of behind the scenes research about what the strengths were of those Daggers and the Mirages that was done based at RAF Coningsby, by the way. Just before the war kicked off proper, they were actually doing research with the French Air Force who came in to help, and they did some manoeuvres and some sort of exercises whereby they took on regular Harriers, not Sea Harriers, unfortunately, which was a bit misleading. That's another story. A little bit off the beam. But the fact is, if you believe that the 9L was the deciding factor that won the battle for the Sea Harriers, you are wrong, I'm afraid. Go and do more research if that's your belief, because you'll find out that was not the case. Roland White, in his final chapter of the book, says that in the event there was no practical actual advantage because of the way they used their missiles. The task force pilots like Sharkey Ward from 801, 809 and 800 Squadron on Hermes as well, they didn't use them in that way. And part of the reason was, I think, the training. They weren't comfortable with that. It was risky, and they wanted to make sure that they would get a kill. So there was lots of examples where they couldn't quite match the speed, of course, of the Argentine aircraft, which were quicker. So there was issues with that, and the range of the new Sidewinder wasn't hugely different. That was one area where it didn't have a massive advantage over the old one, I mean. And so they just went with what they knew. They were highly trained professionals. They were a big factor, those pilots. I tell you now, it's not just Sharkey Ward, but everybody, you know, Mortimer and Andy Old and Dave Morgan and so many. It's not fair to name them because there's lots of names, I can't remember them all now. Dave Braithwaite and people like that. And so many guys, Tim Gedge, you know, there's a lot of guys that went down there and risked everything. And they were very highly trained. The Sea Harrier was a big factor. The smallest advantage was actually the Sidewinder. It was an advantage, but it wasn't really used to its advantage. That's what I'm trying to say. So just for those of you that believe that, I say go back if you're still not convinced and do some more research, because it certainly had a psychological impact, because the Argentines knew about this and they were very fearful, although they couldn't know for sure whether the aircraft chasing them had the new Sidewinder, obviously. And it gave a lot of confidence to the British pilots, so it did have a morale boosting effect. But in actual fact, it wasn't used in a way, you know, when they weren't used in a lot in the way, as I understand it, the Argentine in these engagements, the Argentine pilots weren't using a lot of chaff or countermeasures actually, so that wasn't a factor really either, because the decoys was something that the 9L was particularly good at seeing through and avoiding. And ignoring, basically. So it was, you know, it was a clever new bit of technology for sure, and they called it the death ray, which is where I started talking about it. Anyway, I've gone off at a tangent, but I just want to say, it's a myth, and I felt that the Imperial War Museum, who were very accurate and very interesting with this video. It's the one part of the video I didn't like, because I thought it doesn't actually say it graphically, but it creates this impression about it was an undoubted advantage. But it wasn't used. That's the truth of it. So go and read up yourself and you know what I mean. Back to the review. Rant over. Sorry, I just want to make that clear, because I have done quite a lot of research, and it's made abundantly clear by the guys, both the pilots and, you know, in terms of their the records and the way these weapons were used. I think that had they had the later Harriers with the more advanced. They increased their targeting radars and all this kind of thing, which sort of caught up a bit more. I think Franti were involved, weren't they? And it caught up a bit more with the new technology coming from the Americans. Is it McDonnell Douglas? I can't remember now. I think they developed the missile, and that would have been that would have been different. Then they would have been shooting at them head on, I think, differently. But none of that happened. None of that actually happened. So I think we just need to put that myth to bed. Anyway, let's get back to the review, because I've had me say. But it's just annoying. It's like people look for an excuse. Oh yes, well, despite the fact that we outnumbered you 20-1, that's the reason. Oh yes, you had a big advantage. It's a myth, complete myth. Go and do more research. Right, here we go. So on that very subject, here is the 9M, which is the later version we've just been talking about. So that's fantastic, brilliant weapon. And it's very scary what they do. You know, they basically explode just right behind the aircraft, or right ahead of it in the case of this version. And it just peppers anything with tiny fragments of, I think it's titanium, isn't it? And titanium rods, in fact. Tiny titanium rods, and they shatter everything. Blow your aircraft to bits, basically. Then you've got the Maverick. Is that the Maverick missile? I think it is the Maverick, isn't it? The AGM-64. And then we got a laser guided bomb, and of course they were used for the first time in combat by the Royal Air Force, who were seconded to the task force in the Falklands. And then we've got a fuel tank here, a lantern pod, that's the targeting pod, and then you've got your main nose gear, and I've got to say this looks far better than the the kinetic offering. I'm bound to say that, but it does look better. A more sensible parts breakdown there, I think. Looks stronger as well. And then yeah, you've got little supports. They've really gone into some detail. This looks nice. Looks nice. And then you've got your main sorry, that's still the front undercarriage, and you've got your gear door there as well. I like the clarity of these instructions. I know I've bemoaned a bit of a lack of detail. It's sort of up and down with the detail, to be honest, but I'd like a bit more detail. But the clarity of the images is good. It's not overcrowding the frame, you know, with, if you've ever seen the AMK Tomcat, that is a lesson in how not to do it. It's like, let's get the first 100 parts in the very first frame all stuck on at the same time, you know. Slightly exaggerating, but only very slightly, I warn you. It's horrible. But this is very sensibly done, very clear, you know. It's not like they're trying to save paper and cram everything into an incomprehensible mishmash that's just too busy to follow. Rear landing gear, here we go, showing that going in here. And it looks quite beefy. The mounting points look beefy as well, don't they? Look at that. So I've got, yeah, and actually, let's hope it has a location point. Well, indeed it does, because it shows it here having a little hole. Something that was totally missing on the kinetic model. No location points for it. Just don't know where it's supposed to go. And then they just had an arrow that roughly pointed towards the fuselage. This has a specific arrow to a specific lug location point. So no complaints. And then the final hatches for your gear doors going in, the side hatches. It's got a colour, inner wall colour indications, that's very helpful. And then it doesn't actually show you, it just shows you, what's that saying? Oh, there's a little bit of PE for the front, the little front splitter fence for the aerodynamics on the leading edge of the wing. But it doesn't actually show you any weapons there. Oh, that's odd, it doesn't actually show you mounting the weapons on. Oh, that's strange. So it doesn't actually show the weapons going on at all. That's a little bit odd, to be honest. And that's strange. It just shows the rails, the pylon rails, and that's it. And then at the end, we've just got our colour, our sprue map, showing all the different parts. Slightly strange that. Cockpit though, read before assembly. Okay, it's a bit strange to put this at the end, but okay. Hand painted and water slide sticker. So you've got two options. You've got conventional decals, where you hand paint it and put your decals on. Or on the second option, this is what we talked about my Mosquito, isn't it? So this is a little bit like the Tamiya type scenario, and then this is a bit like your Edward scenario, where you've got a Lambo cockpit, which is 3D printed decals, which you're going to have to remove, I guess, the existing. Yeah, you're going to have to remove the existing detail. That's the only downside to it, of course, and then replace it with that. But you will get probably a fantastic looking rendition of the instruments. And then just, oh yeah, they've got some interesting. They've actually got a paint mask as well. Not only for the cockpit clear parts, but for the intakes and the tail as well, and a colour chart, which is extremely helpful. Well, that's very interesting, isn't it? So, yeah, sorry I went off on my little rant about Sidewinder 9Ls there, but I'm tired of hearing this complete misinformation, this falsehood that gets propagated, and it's one of those things that's been retweeted. And of course, in Argentina, I think it's a very convenient excuse. Their biggest problem was their tactics weren't very good, really. It wasn't the pilots weren't brave and very impressive at flying the aircraft. That was clearly the case. But their tactics and the way they used their aircraft wasn't always the cleverest. I think if Argentina and Britain's positions in that war had been reversed, Britain would have concentrated on finding their carriers above all else. Yeah, which they were trying to do, but they were, yeah. I think there was a bit of cooperation issues on their side between the Navy and the Air Force. But there we go. Very nice instructions, and one or two grumbles, but overall pretty clear actually. Certainly clearer than Kinetic. With attach this over there where we don't know. There's no lack of clarity like that here. It shows you exactly what goes into what holes. Excellent. Very impressed so far. So excellent. So far so good, as they say. Let's go and look at all the goodies then. Now this is going to take a while, I think. So you might as well. This might be a moment to grab a beer or a cup of tea or something quickly. And I'm going to open up the bag, which has got the decals and the... Oh, that is sharp. Jeez. Let's get straight through that. Oh, I've got a new blade. And... Oops. Come on. Right, so what have we got? 3D cockpit. Okay, this I've got to see because I think this is going to be quite an important part of the offering here. Now this kit, I think it's about, memory's going, I think it's about £55, £60, somewhere between 50 and 60 quid in the UK. But it's one of these kits that it needs no aftermarket. Yeah, everything is included, as we're about to discover. Oh, now then. Now I've not seen. I don't think I've actually had in my hands one of these full 3D printed cockpits before, have I? That can be cool. Something I don't normally go for. As you know, I'm a bit cynical about aftermarket, but I think that the zoom is going to have to do its job well here because it's quite small. But I think it's going to be worth it. So check this out. It's even got the canopy detonation deck cord. Look at this. Try and get this in as close as we can. Look at that. So you've got all your TFT screens for the instrumentation at the top. You've got the deck cord as a separate piece. That's going to be quite fiddly to get that on. A bit scary. And then you've got your two banks of switches and controls down the side. And a little bit of the... Here you've got the some of these like corner console arrays where you've got all the switches. It's so extreme. I'm going to need my... I was going to say I need my zoomy... bear with me 1 second. I need my zoomy optimizers on for this. Yeah. I mean, they're really good. They're definitely better. They're definitely better than an Edward set. When I say Edward, I'm not singling them out as a manufacturer. I just mean that type of flat photo etch. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have the relief of it. That said, I'm not entirely convinced, looking at it as I am now closer, I'm not entirely convinced about the clarity, the sharpness. So it'd be interesting to see how the decals compare. So why don't we do that? Why don't we compare the decals? Here are the decals by comparison. They do look a lot sharper. And you've got to remember, you question this, whether you're going to see that 3D at this scale, in this cockpit, whether you're really going to see that much of that 3D effect. And you've got some pretty sharp decals here. So it's not a clear-cut advantage. It's a bit like the Sidewinder. That's a bit... I'll stop going on about that. I'll be getting told off by the Sidewinder experts from China Lake. But you see what I'm saying? They've got cartograph decals, of course. So that's very, very nice. Cartograph logo. I've got to say that those decals are beautiful. Exactly what you'd expect from cartograph, really. Yeah, those are nice. Not a huge amount of colour or what have you on a Harrier, American style Marines Harrier, but very nice. Plenty of stencils. Ouch. Yeah, it's interesting though. So yeah, I like the 3D. It might be like I discussed with my Mosquito. I'm just wondering whether it's the ideal subject for it or not. It's good. It's just for me. it just lacks a little bit of clarity in the way that it's been printed, perhaps. Anyway, you decide, because you saw it at 20 times zoom, which I didn't. See what you think. Oops, sorry. Let's put that back in the bag. It's something different, isn't it? And it's something you don't have to buy as an extra. So they're definitely to be applauded for that. Okay. Try and get this back in one piece. And then I've got some bags to open, which could take me a little bit of time. Right, that's that one done. Okay, we've got the decals done. And then there's just... Oh, this is interesting. Okay, look at this. So we've got our mask set. They've actually mounted it very sensibly, actually. Instead of mounting it on silicon release liner, something that I would... Sorry, zoom back. Something that I would know all about, by the way. I got into this debate recently about... We got discussing about the Airfix Lysander mask set, and suddenly a lot of people became experts on self-adhesive materials, which is fair enough. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. But I've worked in this industry, and what you've got here is like it's a polyester liner, clear polyester. And I used to work for the liner company Mondi that used to do siliconized liners, but I also worked for the face paper that make products like the tape stroke self-adhesive substrates on the face for labels or for masking sets or whatever. So I've worked for Avery Dennison, I worked for MacTac, who actually were bought by Avery Dennison. That's not how I worked at MacTac first and then got headhunted to Avery Dennison. But years later Avery Dennison did buy MacTac. I also worked for Ritrama, the Italian company in this market. Yeah, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4 companies in the industry. So I kind of knew what I was talking about. So sorry, folks, those that didn't agree with me. 14 years in the industry at the cutting edge. So what they've done here is they've done that so they can have a strong. This is for high-speed production, because when you've got a polyester clear plastic liner instead of paper, they can run it at much higher speed and really bang in the pressure. So in one respect, it's a sign of, I was going to say a sign of a lack of quality, but that would be unfair. But it's a sign of trying to produce this as fast and cheaply as possible, and it's probably cheaper for the Chinese guys to produce it on this clear polyester. I don't think it would be in Europe though. That's not the norm. In Europe, you get this on luxury products like, they call it clear on clear, where you have a clear label, like a wine label or a shampoo or something like that, and you have a clear face that sticks on, and they want to be able to cut with a bit more pressure but without die strike, which is when you cut through accidentally into the bursting through the release line. Anyway, sorry, I'm going off a tangent here. Anyway, so that's good though. It's very good because it gives you a very smooth, the biggest benefit of all, especially on these clear on clear labels for shampoos and fancy wines and things, and gifts and stuff like that, is it means the label, because the adhesive is actually applied on the backing paper, and because it is so smooth, that surface, that filmic surface, it's smoother and more even than a paper is. And for that reason you end up with the ultimate in clarity. Now they haven't done it for that reason here. I think they've done it for speed, because they can really well the pressure up and run their cutter at an incredibly high speed. But those are the two benefits of putting a clear filmic liner on like this. It's speed, you can whack the pressure up and not worry about it damaging it, because this is actually very strong, this stuff. Very strong indeed, polyester. It might be polypropylene, sometimes they use PP. In fact, in China it's probably PP because it's cheaper, but it's much more resistant to the cutting edge, so it only cuts through the mask at the front and doesn't pierce it, but they can run them at super speed. Anyway, I'm going off at tangents again, talking about unrelated things. Sorry about that. The benefit of my career there. Then we've got a couple of little tiny stickers. I think there's additional decals that they missed. We've also got some screws, tiny screws, which is good. And then there's a little correction about building your laser guided bombs. Obviously they've got some, there must be an error in the instructions. Either they missed it or it shows the seeker head on the laser guided bomb there. So that's a small correction. And that's that. So that just leaves us now, before we get into the plastic, that just leaves us with the colour call-outs. So let's take a look at these. And these look very nicely done. This whole package of this kit is a quality package. You know, it's like they've looked at the competition and thought, yes, let's do it more like Tamiya and less like Kinetic. Do you know what I mean? So you've got your call-outs there. Got all your, what is that? Ghost grey, is it? It just says grey. It doesn't give the. It doesn't give the equivalent. So what I'm going to do is just check that. I think one of them's ghost grey, just for your benefit. Let's have a quick look. This is turning into a long review because I've gone rambling off about die cutting and sea Harrier, Sidewinder missiles and things like that. Oh, it doesn't say what they call it. It just gives their own name, grey this, grey that. It doesn't say what the Tamiya ones are. And I'm not so familiar. Is it Ghost Grey? Is it LP37? Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, they're all there, so you don't have anything to worry about. So that's the Tomcats, ironically. I'm presuming that they changed from having Tomcats. Then on the other side, we've got this is stencil guide. Sorry, so forget the colours. It's a stencil guide. And you've got all your weapons included. Very good. Super. Nice. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to take these off now. And I spent an entire video wearing those for no apparent reason because I just forgot I'd got on when I was doing my talk about the mosquito. Because I'd just been modelling, obviously. Hence the fact there was no jacket. People were moaning, saying, "Where's your jacket? Where's your watch?" It's not the same. Where's your shirt? Wearing a sweater I was. Right, here we've got the one that's the black sheep, and again, very nice call-outs there. Have a quick look at this. I don't think the printing's the sharpest I've ever seen, actually. Some odd things about the printing when they've got that grey. It seems rather something odd to the eye, a bit fuzzy. And on the other side, we've got also the black sheep. This is the one that was based on the USS Bonhomme Richard in 2016, more recently. Very nice, really good call-outs though. All the stencils are clearly marked, etc, etc. What more could you want than marking? So, oh, I'm sorry, I missed the photo-etch. We haven't got that. There isn't much of it, which I'm delighted about, so I don't like having it. Just don't want it for the sake of it. It slows down the process of building. It's fiddly to deal with, and frankly, it gets on my nerves a little bit sometimes. We'll just leave that away. And there we go. There you go. Just a tiny fret of photo etch, which is nice to have. We don't want to have too much of it, as I say, because it just does cause problems, really. Especially if you're me. I don't like it at all because I have to use super glue. It makes me ill. So, let's put that back in there. Try and get everything together. Just bear with me one moment. It's really feeling like a bit like a sort of a Great Wall Hobby or a Meng kit. It's sort of reminding me of that sort of standard really. Very good. Well, the instructions are better than Great Wall Hobby, aren't they, I suppose? I was being a bit unkind to there. Right. Look at that. So we've got our own boxed separate piece, which is the canopy frame for the surround. And a mighty detailed little thing it is too. Look at this. Wow. Look at that. It's got all the rivets in it. You see that? All the rivets? That is very impressive. Yeah. I like that. I like the fact they've packed it separately as well. That's superb. Let's just pop that away. So I need it in a big box. They could have just bagged it, but because it's got the protection. But anyway, then we've got, I think these are resin wheels. Ah, that wasn't made very clear, actually. Pretty sure they are resin. So you've got your wheels, tyres, or tyres anyway. Yeah, I think they are definitely resin. And they've got hard to show this. And they've got weight on wheels, bulging and flat bottom bulging at the sides. It's quite hard to show you this. It really is hard actually, because they're so small. You just pop them on so you've got. It has a very similar size of wheel at the front nose gear on these to spread out the weight evenly. I think. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same, but it's very close. I think the top one, as you're looking at the three of them, is the one that's the nose gear, like that. But aren't they nice? Really nice treads on. They've done that well, haven't they? By the way, if you can hear a lot of strange noises in the background, it's the rustling of the leaves, because we've got some really high winds here at the moment. It's been a bit of a miserable January actually, been quite wet. It started off with snow, of course, just after New Year. Now we seem to be cursed by sort of a bit of an Atlantic low tropical weather that's come in, but because it's cold, it's blowing a bit of a gale. Right, I need my ruler, and we're going to have a proper look at these now. I shall give you the verdict. But so far, it's nice to kick off the year with something a bit different. Oh, I've just cut my ruler there. Nice to kick off the year with something a bit different that I haven't seen before, and that's so good, because it's looking mighty, isn't it? Right, refueling probe and wingtips we've got here, with the control vector control nozzles, the hot air control nozzles on the end of the wingtips. So that's what you've got there, and then you've got the closed. Is it closed or is it open? No, that's the open refueling probe, I think, at the top. Yes, and then the closed one is this one here. Beautiful moulding, no flash, no nonsense. Then we've got some of the trim pieces, and look at the sort of riveting detail here. Isn't that nice? So this is just ahead of the cold air jet, the forward nozzle, and then you've got your belly section here. Look at the detail of this. Ooh, that's impressive, folks. Here you've got those chaff dispensers we spoke of, countermeasures. This is the one that goes underneath, and I think the empty one is the one on the right as you're looking at it, and the full is the one on the left. Am I right in saying that? Then you've got your main. Is that your air brake? Ooh, some nasty ejector pin marks on the back of that. Hope it's not the air brake actually, but it has got some wicked ejector pin marks there. Can you see those? Here and here and here and here. Which I never like to see on something that may be open. But other than that, beautiful. So that's a good start. I'm not sure about the ejector pins. It may be that that's actually just a section that's closed. Can't quite decide. I think that's the gear door, if I'm honest. In which case, tiny black mark. Right, next. Yeah, there's a lot of separate bags, so please just bear with me. This is going to be a super long review because of the way they packed it, you know. I think we'll go for some of the big parts actually and get them out of the way. So let's go for the fuselage. I've got to be careful how I cut this because they haven't given us a lot of spare here. Bit of that. Oh, now this is superior to kinetic, and in fairness, their moulding and their plastic was actually quite nice. There's issues with the design of it, but the actual surface quality and the actual, the tooling was good. I thought that was the one thing I really liked about the kit, which is one of the reasons it looks so good now. It's been well and truly operated on. But look at this; it's nice, isn't it? Some fantastic riveting detail there. Really, really fine and very crisp looking. So that's that side. Let's do the other side as well. And on the other side, we seem to have got a bit more spare on our bag. This is the opposite side. More of the same. Ooh, do you know what? They've done a really beautiful job of the moulding here. Get a bit closer. Look at that. That's nice. That's really nice. Yes, I fear I was right about. Look at the aperture there. That part I just moaned about. I think that was the. It was the gear door. It was the gear door, the main gear door. So those ejector pins, you'll have to take care of those, I'm afraid. So tiny black mark there, because that was a bit thoughtless of them. Perhaps they could have designed that a little bit better. Or they slide moulded it, because I don't think it is really not slide moulded sprue. Not yet, anyway. I haven't seen one yet. Okay. So let's just the fuselages, though, the sides of the fuselages are absolutely stunningly good, I'd say. You know, that part I'd give 10 out of 10 to, so it's really nice. Somebody was very rude to me a few weeks ago, by the way, and said, Jesus, you know, all you do is gripe about everything. Well, that's good, I'm consistent, yeah? It's people who gripe about certain products and turn a blind eye to others that you've got to watch out for. If I'm griping about everything, that shows you I've got an eye for detail. Doesn't mean I'm perfect, I don't miss things, which I do. But I'm just trying to give you the good points and the bad points. It doesn't matter whether it's Airfix or Tamiya or Uma or Kinetic or who it is. I'm going to say what I like and what I don't like, and that's it. And if you don't like it, well, don't watch my channel. It's as simple as that, really. However, I will just say this about me griping. I do gripe about other things as well. But I can be like Mr. Angry from Burley. Good old Steve Wright's invention, wasn't he, in the 1980s? But I do think that said, me moaning and being very critical, when you look at, like kits of the year, the kits that were in that list, look at them as a whole, we are very spoiled, aren't we? We live in a golden age of quality now, which is why, when there's something like we had the Airfix debacle, which is why I was very upset about that and why I got a bit cross about it on screen, because I don't think it's acceptable in the modern era, but especially when they're doing such good work in a lot of what they're doing, only to be let down by let's be honest, a bit of a shoddy manufacturing, the word for it. But we are spoilt, you look at the design of that kit that I'm learning about, that Messerschmitt, but you look at all of them as well. All those top 10 kits are amazing kits. We are spoiled. We live in a golden age, really, now. Who knows, it may be we should enjoy it while it lasts, because you never know with technology and AI and all this other stuff that's going on. How long that this will last before the hobby fades away, because I'm fearing that might be what happens. Sounds a bit negative again, but I'm trying to be positive this year. So here we go with our wings. Look at this with their leading edge extensions. Look, this is one of the things that marks out the late model Harriers. They have these leading edge extensions to the edge of the wing, where it meets, and it just smooths the airflow where the wing meets the actual fuselage. So it basically separates the underneath. It kind of separates, doesn't it, the air from the fuselage a little bit gentler, a little bit earlier than it would do on the early Harriers. But look at the detail on that wing. There's no warping here, got a lovely flat sprue. And then we've got amazing riveting detail underneath. It's all they're all depressed rivets, a bit like you get on the ICM kits, which is good because I think it works very well on scale models at this scale in particular. And it's very, very beautiful. I mean, the moulding there, look at that, the vent there for the engine. Oh, it's gorgeous, isn't it, really? You can see what I was saying about, the golden age and all that. It's fantastic, isn't it? Really. Absolutely stellar. Yeah, that's a nice model. You've got your, I think it's the compressor blades here for the Pegasus engine, which are, yeah, they are in fact hollow. It's hard to tell, but trust me, they are hollow. Very, very fine as well, because the holes are very fine, but it looks, looking with the light behind it, it's beautifully consistent actually. It's better than you probably think it is, that. Beautifully crafted, that. No flash, no gaps filling in. Gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. A super sprue. I already have an idea where this is going in terms of marks out of 10. I think I've sort of got a clear picture in my mind about what we've got here, and it's remarkable really. It's not quite blowing my socks off as much as the IBG Spitfire did, but it's very close, I've got to say. It's very, very close. So we've got here our intakes for our Pegasus engine. There's two options, of course: open and closed doors. Open and closed doors. So, and here is the open or closed doors. If I put them side by side, you can see the difference. So I'll zoom you in. There we are. So there we are. Open, the doors open, or the doors closed. And of course, that is the top, isn't it? Yeah, that is the top. So I have to get my head around that for a second just to orientate it. So yeah, we're looking at the top. So in flight, doors are closed, and then they're often open when they're on the ground, aren't they? And they sort of lean in due to gravity. Bottom ones, of course, lean out, lean shut, so to speak. However, on this side, I think you've got to go with this though, because, well, you don't have to, but it's just very tempting, isn't it? Look at that. That's beautiful, isn't it? Really nice moulding. Yeah, we didn't get that with kinetic. We got quite a crude way of doing it with, it was like something from the 70s, I'm afraid. Right, okay, that's very nice indeed. Then we move on to on the same subject really, the jet nozzles. So let's have a look at them. This has turned into a much longer review than I was expecting. I didn't expect all these multiple dozens and dozens of bags. Look at that. Oh yes. Now it's interesting because you can see the different design here to the original Harrier. So you've got the this in my right hand. This is the front cold air jets, which are used for helping to create thrust. The hot air jets, that creates most of the thrust, of course, from the engine. They've got a different design to the earlier Harriers or the Sea Harrier. Look at the shape of it. It's not the same, is it? If you remember, they were much more like this on the early Harriers, and then the Americans have gone for a much more straight pipe, so to speak, non-chamfered off exit pipe. But it's clearly slide moulded. This is. Look at the beautiful opening. Yeah, they've done a nice job with these, haven't they? And even these are slide moulded, because if you look down, I'm sure I can capture this very well. You can always tell it's slide moulded. Look at the bridge over the actual. This is where there's been another tool that's gone in. Yeah. Beautiful. Wow. Really nice. And then you've got, quite rightly on the same sprue, you've got your heat shields. That's impressive. So there is some slide moulding going on here. It's pity they didn't slide mould that door for the main gear, because that would have been nice. Not to have had the ejector pins on it. But those are gorgeous. Really nice. Oh, sorry, something I missed there. That is the. Sorry, I did miss this. So busy was I looking at these the vectoring nozzles. I didn't look at the tailpipe, which of course has got its own. It has its own blown exit, which helps create for stability and pitch control, etc. Through these doors on the side here. So that's the tail cone. You've got a door underneath and 2 doors at the side, and it blows in different proportions according to how the pitch is required of the aircraft. Helps it to in pitch and yaw, doesn't it? That's nice though, isn't it? Beautifully moulded again. Sorry, that was a bit remiss of me there. Going too fast. Yeah, we've only been here an hour. I don't actually have a counter. I think it is about an hour now, isn't it? Well, there we go. That was very, very nice indeed. So, what we have now is the clear parts, and this is going to be, can we make or break, can't it? Especially on new manufacturers' kits. We will wait this with bated breath. What have we got? What have we got? Well, we've got, is that supposed to be, we've got a seam line down the windscreen, but I think it's intended to be there because I can actually see it in the artwork, and there's no seam line on the main canopy, so it's not a manufacturing issue. I would say that I think this is the weakest part, in that there's a lot of distortion. I've got to be honest with you. Not as in quality or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that for a second. But it is noticeable, and it's very, very thick. I think that canopy is a bit old school and a bit out of scale, actually, in terms of the thickness of the plastic I'm talking about. See what you think. So, actually, the windscreen, which I picked up on straight away, that looks all right. It's got a seam down the front, but it does have it on the real aircraft. I can see it in the artwork. Can you see that? It's just got this it's very faint, the seam. Yeah, you can see it there, can't you? There it is. But when you come to the main canopy, it's quite distorted. I'm not sure if I can really show it. Now, it's always challenging. We know it's always difficult with a bubble type canopy, which it is. But what worries me, a slight, I'm going to lose a point or half a quarter of a point here. Look how thick it is. It doesn't look very scale-like to me, that looks too thick. I mean, if that was the real aircraft, that would be like 10 inches thick, that glass. Maybe even a foot thick. It's as wider than your hand in thickness. I think that's just a little bit out of scale. Being a bit picky, I am being a bit picky, but I think it's not quite spot on. If you're thinking I'm being a bit, a bit unfair, I would simply put this to you. Go and look at what ICM are doing with clear parts and think about it. There's no way that they would have produced it that thick. That's about 4 millimeters thick in actual fact, I reckon that is. It just isn't right. Now, it isn't that thick at the front. Sure, it's not supposed to be that thick. I'm sorry I picked up on this, but it was heading for almost a 10 out of 10, but I think it's going to just drag it back slightly. Look at the windscreen. You can see that's not as thick as 4 mils. That's not as thick. So I'm just a bit unconvinced about that. It's a bit chunky, and there's a lot of distortion. And I say it's hard for me to sort of portray that to you. It's the weak sprue. It's the weak sprue. It's not terrible. It's not terrible, to be honest. Would people really notice it? That distortion is... Actually, I don't know if I can show you this on the camera, but it is actually very distorting. It's one of the poorer clear parts we've seen in the last 12 months. That it's not terrible, but it's not up to the current standard from from even Airfix or ICM or Tamiya. I think that's a little bit low rent. I think they should have perhaps gone somewhere else, but I suspect it's the same people, but they're not experts at doing clear parts. Just saying, that's my take on it. That's not quite as good as I was hoping it was going to be. Get that in there. It's not terrible, but it's not up to the standard of the rest of the kit. I don't think that's all. Anyway, I'm glad that's out of the way. Hopefully I think the rest will be okay. You can kind of tell. because it's all made to the same standard. Because I think when you're doing clear parts, it's a slightly different discipline than regular injection moulding, because it's so much more critical, isn't it? Okay, we've got 2 of these. Two, shouldn't there? Well, I've only got 1. That seems a bit odd. Unless I missed something. Oh no, slightly oddly they've done. Okay, it's the fairing for the for the wheel, the outrigger wheels, and they've got this fairing on its own in a sprue, and then the other one is actually, it looks like it's actually built into the. Yeah, it is. It's just built into the other sprue. So they've sort of chopped this and done it on its own. Slightly odd way of doing it. It doesn't matter. Not a problem. Looks beautiful. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Okay, nothing wrong with that. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Pop that in there. There's lots and lots of bags I've got to seal here. It's going to be a full-time job sorting that lot out. Good gracious. Keep you busy all weekend. I'm filming this on a Saturday lunchtime as we speak. Very miserable, cold, windy day, so I thought, why don't I get some reviews done, which I haven't done it for a long time. Right, we've got our lantern pod here, beautiful it is as well. I do wonder if, I don't want to sound too picky here, but I do wonder if the panel lining on this isn't a bit heavy though. I'm not sure, it looks a bit, it looks quite deep, the panel lining, for something like that size to me. But it's certainly crisp. It's all there. There's that, and then there's your laser guided bombs here. The long ones, very aero. Complete the seeker heads there. Look, nice, isn't it? Yeah, seeker heads. And all the pop-out fins, of course. So that is very, very nice indeed. Just pop those away to the bag. Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed about that clear, the clear canopy parts, because the rest of the kit is so outstanding, really. It's just not quite matching the rest. We had that on, what was the kit we had that on? The Armour Hurricane, wasn't it? We had a little bit of a grumble about clear parts, and it didn't match the rest of the plastic. And the Meteor from Revell, same thing. Right, here's your Maverick missiles here. Yeah, they are Maverick, aren't they? I think they are, yeah. For sure. Very nicely done. Look at the detail on the tailpipes on them. See that? See how close I can get with focus. Look at that! Oh, that's nice. Wow. Yeah, those are really gorgeous. And then on the other side you've got this is your Sidewinder, your 9M Sidewinders, of course. Doesn't seem to have any seeker head on it, does it? I think the seeker heads are somewhere else. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Little fins, yep. Looks good. There's 4 of those in fact, isn't there? Okay, now we're going to get some bigger stuff now. Big chunky parts. Airframe and some tanks and things. Yeah, I'm just a bit frustrated. I wish I'd kind of left that clear part till the end now, because it's kind of spoiling my perception of it. Probably good that I didn't have it right at the beginning now, because that would have put me right off. Anyway. You do get this, especially with new manufacturers, you know, it's like they've found someone who can do some really nice moulding for them, and they forget that moulding clear plastic is quite a lot different to different sort of discipline. So here we have our nose. Oh, this is beautiful. Again, is it? Am I being picky? Is it a little bit heavy with the detail? Do you think? It's very, very crisply done. Just a bit worried about the scale appearance of it, whether it's just a little bit overdone. This. You see what I mean? Quite deep, those panel lines, aren't they? It's not quite as subtle as something like ICM's, is it? These are those top fuselage rear, just ahead of the tail, where they have these chaff dispensers, and here they are, the actual chaff dispensers themselves. They're quite cool, aren't they? Oh. It's a nice model, it's a really nice kit, no question. Other side of the nose, again, nice detail, but not exactly subtle, it's a little bit heavy. I was talking about heavy die strike on the roll cutters for the masks, and it's as though they've sort of got that same principle here, really, where it's a bit heavy with the depth. Do you know what I mean? We've got the nose there, of course, the radome. Just sort of glossed over. And then we've just got 3 bags to go. So we have got here the tanks. Yeah, there we go. So we've got the ventral tank. It is the big ventral tank. It's actually 2. It's 2 the same, in fact. So these are these. What are they? 100-gallon tanks, I think. Quite big, aren't they? It's a big thing for a Harrier to carry. That bigger than the ones that the RAF generally use, I think. Although they did have 2, didn't they? I was reading about this in the Falklands. They preferred to go with the smaller of the 2, the 300-gallon, I think it was. So, because they were always worried about being overloaded, especially at takeoff. I think it gave the Harrier a bit of a loading issue. Those big tanks, when they were fully armed and fully fueled, it's having to go off the ski jump. It was quite tricky, I think. It's not so bad when they've got the full runway; they can do a normal takeoff. I think that caused a lot of concerns. Here you've got some of those really nice pylons. Again, don't want to be critical because I do like the way they moulded it. It's beautiful. Again, just wondering if it's a little bit overly deep, some of this lining detail. Not sure. I'm not going to mark it down for that, I'm not. But I'll let you decide whether you think it's a little bit OTT. It's just very, very slightly exaggerated, perhaps, I think is the best way of putting it. And then you got a couple of the weapons rails. So that takes care of the tanks. Put that back in that bag. Oops. No, that'll do me. But I tell you what, I bet this will build into a super looking Harrier. Really will. Make a nice model. And then just 2 left, so we're going to go with the tails first, I think. Airframe parts. This is where they've gone a bit weird with their design here, of the bag I mean. We've got a very tight bag. I think that would benefit from having that strange pylon fairing for the main gear, the outriggers I mean. Removing, actually. It'd be better off if that was separate and not taking up all that bag. So much so that I'm going to do it right now in front of you. I'm just going to trim it off. It's just silly. But, you know, they put it in a separate bag with the other one. So we've actually seen that already. Right, this is much nicer and easy to handle now. Now you see here, I don't think they've gone too heavy with the detailing. It's kind of a little bit inconsistent, I think. I wouldn't say that's overly heavy. It's just about right. That reminds me of the ICM Hamden here, a little bit. It's really crisp, very fine and subtle, and it's not sort of this overly trenchy panel lines. And then you've got your flaps, open or closed, and so you got two lots of two open, two sets. One's open, one closed, and of course you've got your they have a lot of sort of aero sort of strakes off the back to try and clean up the trailing edge aerodynamics, I think there. And then you've got your ailerons here. It's nice. Yeah, I like it. I mean, look, again, I don't think this is necessarily overdone. You know, it's not like that Armour Hurricane with its rather extreme riveting on the wings that we talked about. That's very nice, that. That's very nice. So I'll pop that back in there. It's going easy there. I've released it from its bond of slightly unnecessary additional sprue. And that just leaves this one, final one. So let's have a look at this. This is all the ancillary bits that we haven't seen thus far. You'll note when I was chopping that sprue, that great big chunky sprue, that I was using my old Tamiya set. Not the God Hand, and not the Zerkimura superfine ones either. That would not do your cutters any good at all. So if you're ever doing something like chopping big chunks of sprue, like I just did, make sure you've got an older nipper. Don't use your finest nippers for taking big thick pieces off. Not recommended. Right, final sprue then, last sprue, and then we'll have our verdict. They've done this beautifully, this last one. We've ended with one of the best. Here we go. Some really fine detail in here, so I'll go around this nice and slowly for you. So you've got your gun packs. These are the actual JU8 gun packs that go underneath, and they even have a strake built into them, an aerodynamic strake, to help clean up the airflow. Then we have got the underside of the cockpit, which is actually going into the wheel bay, and then you've got those wheel bay well walls with all the piping, electronics and conduits. Then we've got quite an impressive looking ejector seat, I've got to say. That's nice. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's really well built up, and it's got the belts built into it as well, look. I think they've done that really nicely, actually. It needs a little bit of careful painting, of course, but there we go. Then we seem to have two different options here for the, I'm not sure why. There's obviously one for a different variant to come out. For the top deck, at the top of the cockpit, where it meets the frame for the canopy. So this is like your top, as I say, top deck, you could call it. It's not made clear why there's two, but anyway. Then over here we've got our instruments, which, now, looking at this, I'm starting to get that Tamiya vibe again. So those are nice. Those are nice, the TFT screens. I'm not sure, if I'm really being brutally honest, if I was making this kit, I'm not sure I'd be cutting all that off and sticking on those 3D things. I think I'll just go with the decals. Make sure they're nicely trimmed so they'll fit into the recesses. There's no excess carrier film, and you'll be good to go. Again, here we've got some of the gear bay, the wiring and the conduits and the gear bay, and then we've got part of the cockpit tub itself. Then you've got the sides of the ejector seat with the head box, which look absolutely fantastic. Your Martin Baker ejector seat. It's a cracking kit, isn't it? It's really nice. The detailing is just beautiful, and there's no flash, there's no rubbish, no warpage, nothing like that. No sink marks anywhere. So the only flaws were, in summary, this is going to be an easy one for me, I think, really. The only things that counted against it, I think the instructions are a little bit, they're good, but they could have been better. A little bit confused here and there, not entirely clear, but pretty good overall, in fairness. I've seen much worse. Border, tack on. I think we could have done with some history about the aircraft, which we didn't get, did we? Unfortunately. But in real terms, in terms of making the model, the only things that count against it were those quite nasty ejector pins on the gear bay door, which I think there's a bit of an error about them, but surely they could have, given that they've got some of this slide molding that's so perfect, I'm sure they could have found a way around that somehow. So that is a little bit disappointing. Let me get this back in here. The clear parts, though, they were really the Achilles heel, because I just don't think, they don't feel like they're from the same kit, if I'm honest. I'm going to be brutally sort of straight up blunt about it. I'm going to go in here. See if I'm going to work. Oh, I've done it okay, not too bad. So, I think that it loses a quarter of a point for the clear parts. It loses a quarter of a point for that ejector pin issue, because it was a bit silly where they put them in, kind of obvious as well. So I'm not going to mark it down for the. Wasn't all that enamoured with the 3D printing, but it's an asset you can use, and you know, once it's closed up in that cockpit, I don't think it matters which way you go. It's entirely up to you, really. I'd go with the easy route there personally, and I think you get less work if you just use the provided decals, and that's the way I'd do it. But they give you the choice, so it's entirely up to the modeller's own discretion. You choose. So I'm going to give it 9.5 out of 10, because the grey plastic, it's a bit like, it's actually very like the Revell Meteor, this is, in terms of the strengths and weaknesses it's got. The grey plastic is perfect. Clear plastic's not quite as good. It suffers from the same issue, distortion. And the thickness of that clear canopy was just not right. That's just out of scale, really. So it's just fallen a little bit, but it's a beautiful package, and it's got everything, you know, you got masks are in there, and the fact that it was on the clear film as well, I like that, because that's considered more upmarket, I've got to tell you, if you're not used to it. And you know, you've got all the decals, you've got 3D printing, you've got a little bit of resin wheels. It's a nice package, it's a really nice package. So I think 9.5 out of 10 is a great score. I was thinking it might get 10, but just let down for the two things that we just talked about. So there we go. But I have to say to Aubrey in Australia, thank you ever so much for sending that. I could maybe see me building that. No, it won't be soon, it won't be soon. But I can maybe see me picking that up one day and thinking I'm going to put this together and have a go at this. Just to see how much better than the Kinetic it is. It'll be a lot better, I'm confident. It couldn't be any worse, it couldn't. I bet that goes together really quite nicely, because it's so clean and it looks like it's been thought through very well, and the instructions are super clear, you know. Didn't suffer from, just proves my point about Kinetic C, Harry, when you look at the instructions. Super clear, no question marks or guessing game involved in this. Here's the lug, here's the hole, that goes into that, not over there somewhere like the Kinetic was saying with their instructions, which were absurd. So it's a beautiful package. Overall, I'm impressed by the manufacturer, got to say. So I hope to see more from them. Hopefully they'll get the clear parts a bit better. If they're watching, just go and have a look at the ICM kits and you'll see what I'm talking about. That's an area they need to work on. But apart from that, absolutely fantastic package. So thank you to Aubrey. Very grateful to him for sending us that kit to see. Now, where would it have come in kits of the year? Now, let me try and be very fair and balanced about this. Obviously, it's pretty good, so it's going to bounce somebody down. It probably means that the Rhinefield model King Tiger get bounced out at the top as well. Where would it come? I think it would come somewhere around 7-8, because it's... I thought it would come higher than that. I actually thought it was going to bounce the Airfix Jaguar out of 5th place, but I don't think, given that clear parts issue, I don't think it can. Yeah, I think 7, just behind the Meteor, maybe just ahead of the Tacom HS129 set. Although I feel bad for Tacom, so somewhere 7-8 is where it would come in kits of the year. But to come in the top 10 for a manufacturer I've never heard before, a bit like, you know, with IBG, fantastic result though, you know. So they can be very proud of themselves. That's where it would have been. It would have been top 10, but lower end of the top 10, let's say, mid to lower. I think that's a good result for someone I've never really heard of before, so well done to them. It's a nice kit. I'd like to have a go at building that one day. Anyway, thank you. If you stayed this long, I hope you thought it was interesting, and I'd just say to you, keep your eyes open for more products from Yuma, because it's just very well executed, you know, just the glitches I mentioned, but They've got so many things really right. If they can just focus on the clear parts, they've got winning kits there for sure. Market, you know, up with the top market leaders almost. So very impressive stuff. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to tune in. We've got plenty of other stuff coming, including ICM's latest products. Always worth seeing. And I hope to see you in the very near future. So please join me again. And until next time, please stay well, stay safe, look after yourselves, and happy modelling. And until next time, thanks a lot, and bye for now.